Hey everyone, Nigel and Luke here, and welcome to another edition of Crimes of the Week International.
If you tuned into last week's edition of Crimes of the Week International, then you'll probably remember the story of the 17-year-old girl from the Mayenne region of France that was allegedly kidnapped while jogging. The teenager went missing during an afternoon run on November 8th in the Belle Branche forest close to her home in Saint-Brice. The 17-year-old's disappearance sparked a large effort after her father recovered her phone and GPS watch abandoned along her jogging route. Both had small amounts of blood on them, causing serious concern. At the time of last week's recording, the story initially seemed like it had a happy ending when the girl turned up relatively unharmed a day later claiming she had escaped from a group of kidnappers. However, shortly after we released our segment, relief turned to shock when the teenager admitted to police during further questioning that she had made the entire story up. According to reports, some of the 17-year-old's injuries were, quote, of accidental origin. She also confessed that she had cut her own clothing with a pair of scissors to make the kidnapping story appear more convincing. Unfortunately, at the current time, no real details are available about why the teenager allegedly faked the kidnapping. Police don't appear to know either, but say that they will continue their investigation and that the girl may face charges for reporting the imaginary crime. Before we wrap up this segment, we just wanted to give a special shout out to all the viewers of last week's edition that helpfully pointed out that the break in this case had been made. We always appreciate you reaching out with any information you may have about the stories we cover.
Authorities in Western Australia say that a 24-year-old man is facing numerous charges this week after he threatened to kill staff at a restaurant in the suburb of East Perth when they refused to make him fresh fries. According to reports, the incident took place late on the night of November 12th at a local shop on Bennett Street that's known for its fish and chips. The man asked for fries but was refused service and told that the kitchen had been closed since 9 p.m. Rather than accept this information and go somewhere else for his late-night meal, the man allegedly became irate and threatened to kill several employees unless they got to work on his order. To show that he was serious about the threat, the man reportedly revealed to staff members that he was carrying more than one knife. Fearing for their safety, some employees made the 24-year-old man his fries, while others contacted police. Officers arrived several minutes later and found the man still waiting for his order. He was immediately taken into custody. The man has since been refused bail and now faces several charges, including threatening to kill, being armed in a way that may cause fear, and failing to comply with a request to give police personal details. He was reportedly not charged with armed robbery because he paid for the fries.
Authorities in Kenya say that 3 convicted terrorists are safely back in custody after they escaped from a maximum security prison earlier this week. According to reports, the 3 men were being housed at Kamiti Prison in Nairobi, the largest maximum security prison in Kenya. They escaped on November 15th, triggering a nationwide manhunt. After their escape, the men were publicly identified as Musharraf Abdallah, Joseph Odiambo, and Mohammed Abakar. The most notorious of the group was Abakar, who had been sentenced to 41 years in prison for his role in the infamous 2015 Garissa University attack in which 148 people were killed. After their escape, the men were first spotted at a shopping center about 16 kilometers from the prison, where they were witnessed buying food and looking exhausted and disoriented. They managed to stay on the run until they were tracked to a remote village in Kitui County on November 18th. Locals told police that the men were asking for directions to get to a forest on the border with Somalia that is a known hideout for the group Al-Shabaab. The men were arrested after being reported to the authorities, and at the time of this recording are being transported back to Nairobi. While few details have been shared so far about how the men managed to make their escape, reports from local media have suggested that lax rules and incompetence at the prison are to blame. The men were apparently being kept in the general population of prisoners at the facility, even though it was known that they had resources and good networks both inside and outside the prison. At least 7 prison guards at the Kamiti prison have since been arrested for allowing the escape to take place under their watch.
Authorities in Brazil say that 2 would-be robbers got more than they bargained for this week when they tried to raid a dentist's office and were confronted by a military police officer. According to reports, the story began on the morning of November 11th, when the 46-year-old officer went to visit his dentist in the administrative region of Ceilândia, in Brazil's federal district. The officer had taken the morning off because he had a broken tooth and needed emergency care. The procedure was about 80% complete when, just before 10:30 a.m., the 46-year-old began to hear noises that felt out of place for a dentist's office. While still lying in the dental chair, he heard someone yell, "Hand over the cell phone," and then noticed that people were starting to be brought into the room where he was being treated. Almost immediately after that, a 19-year-old man armed with a knife told him to get out of the chair and lie on the floor. The officer complied, but at the same time began to discreetly reach for his gun. At some point, the armed robber noticed, and the two of them began to struggle. Thankfully, the officer was able to rely on his training, and got the 19-year-old to surrender once he got a good hold on his weapon. The officer didn't have any handcuffs, so he left the man lying on the floor while he checked the rest of the dentist's office. When he stepped out into the hallway, he was attacked by a second 19-year-old suspect who was also armed with a knife. The officer managed to shoot the suspect in the arm and get him to release his weapon, after which he also told him to lay on the floor. At that point, the authorities were called, and the first suspect was taken to jail, while the second was taken to the hospital where he was treated for non-life-threatening injuries. In interviews following the incident, the 46-year-old officer told local news outlets that he was happy that he could help to avoid a potential tragedy, and credited his 25 years of experience with the military police for knowing how to respond. The officer has not been identified by name because he said he preferred to remain anonymous. He also cautioned that the use of police force must be tailored to the situation, and that he only shot because he felt that it was absolutely necessary.
Authorities in the Indian state of Tamil Nadu say that a 27-year-old man and 4 of his friends have been arrested this week after they staged his kidnapping in an attempt to extort money from his uncle. According to reports, the case began when the 27-year-old, identified only as Hamid, left the house on the night of November 15th. Before leaving, he made sure to tell his family that he was making a quick trip to the pharmacy and would be back soon. No one saw or heard from Hamid until approximately 2 a.m. the next morning, when men claiming to be the kidnappers called his uncle, a 52-year-old onion trader identified only as Hassan. The men told Hassan that they wouldn't let Hamid go unless they received 1 million rupees in ransom, equivalent to roughly $13,000. When Hassan declined to pay the ransom, the men hung up, only to call back 2 hours later after they sent him images of what appeared to be cut marks and blood on Hamid's hands. This time, Hassan said he would pay the ransom, but instead went directly to police. A short time later, Hassan arrived at the place where he had been told to drop the money along with several police officers. The faked kidnapping plot was discovered almost immediately after they arrived, and Hamid and his 4 friends who had helped to carry out the scheme were promptly arrested. Further investigation revealed that the group's initial plan was actually to kidnap Hassan while he was on his way back from work, but they abandoned this plan when they went to his shop and realized the place was too crowded. The 5 scammers remain in custody.
Representatives from Japan's Hyogo Prefectural Police say that a 55-year-old man was recently arrested after he was caught engaging in disturbing stalking behavior that bizarrely involved a woman's bank account. According to reports, the incident began when the 55-year-old first met his 39-year-old victim at the restaurant where she worked sometime in October. Though it's not clear how, the man discovered some limited details about the woman's bank account, enough that he was able to send her electronic money transfers afterwards. Authorities allege that between October 11th and 29th, the man repeatedly sent the woman e-transfers, usually in the amount of 1 yen, or slightly less than 1 US cent, making use of the limited space available in the description field to send the woman messages. The transfers reportedly included messages such as, "Let's chat," and "Pay me back." At least a dozen of these e-transfers were sent to the 39-year-old in total. Though the woman ignored the messages, this only caused the man to escalate his behavior, and after a couple of weeks, he began showing up outside of her home. It was at that point that the woman reported the 55-year-old to police, and he was arrested on November 4th. During questioning, the man admitted to what he had done, saying that he stalked the woman because he liked her. The man is now facing charges under Japan's Anti-Stalking Act, and he reportedly remains in custody. Police believe that this is the first recorded case of a person being stalked through their bank account in the country.
Authorities in England say that one man is dead and another is injured this week after a suspected terror attack outside of a hospital. According to reports, the incident began when the suspect, who has since been identified as 32-year-old Imad al-Swelmin, got into a taxi shortly before 11 a.m. on Sunday, November 14th, and asked to be driven to Liverpool Women's Hospital. Upon arriving, he detonated a homemade explosive device, causing a blast to rip through the vehicle. Though Swelmin was killed instantly, the driver of the taxi, a man named David Perry, was able to get out of the taxi in time and escaped with injuries. Based on the reports we read, it seems that no one else has been reported injured. At the time of this recording, it appears that authorities are still working to piece together many of the details about what happened. While the incident has been deemed a suspected terror attack, a motive still has yet to be released, and it is said that Swelmin was not on the radar of any of the UK's security services. Some have theorized that the incident could have been related to the commemoration of Remembrance Day in the UK, as services are generally held on the Sunday closest to November 11th. Authorities say they're investigating this possibility, but haven't found any evidence so far. Several people who were arrested in the wake of Sunday's attack that were believed to be associates of Swelmin have since been released and have not been charged with any crimes. It is now believed that he acted alone and may have been planning the crime for up to 6 months before carrying it out. Some reports state that there is evidence that Swelmin's device malfunctioned, as most of the damage done to the taxi was from fire and not from the explosion itself. Other reports allege that Perry may have locked the doors of the taxi, preventing Swelmin from getting out and entering the hospital, though these claims are unconfirmed. The incident remains under investigation.
Authorities in Bogota, Colombia say that a 27-year-old taxi driver is in critical condition this week after he was the victim of a terrifying acid attack by an unknown assailant. According to reports, the morning of Saturday, November 14th, started out like any other for the young driver, identified as Edison Rojas. Edison has been a cab driver for 9 years in the city. He usually works late in the afternoon and continues overnight to support his wife and 2 children. At around 4:30 a.m. that morning, Edison finished meeting up with a colleague in the city's International Center neighborhood and began driving north. Shortly thereafter, he was flagged down by a woman on the corner of 60th Street and Caracas Avenue. The woman requested to be taken just a few kilometers away to the neighborhood of Teusaquillo. Things seemed fine until the woman told Edison to make a turn. When he did so, she made a grab for his cell phone, and the two of them began to struggle. The next thing Edison knew, the woman had removed a bottle from her purse that contained an unknown liquid and began to pour it on his face and body. As soon as she did, his skin began to feel like it was on fire. Blinded, coughing, and fighting for his life, Edison managed to somehow maintain control of the vehicle. He began honking his horn to try and signal anyone nearby, and also radioed the taxi station for help. Thankfully, his colleagues were able to track his vehicle, and police were soon sent on their way. Unfortunately, by the time they arrived, the woman had escaped, and Edison's situation was dire. He was rushed to the hospital, where he was placed in the ICU. At the current time, Edison's family say that he remains in critical condition. His medical bills are beginning to pile up, and he still needs several expensive surgeries for his eyes and throat, as well as skin grafts due to the extent of the damage from the acid. Even then, it may be too late to save his vision. Authorities say that they are still uncertain what kind of chemical was used in the attack. At the time of this recording, the woman behind the terrifying incident remains unidentified, and no motive behind the crime has yet been uncovered. That brings us to the end of this edition of Crimes of the Week International. If you're a fan of the new series, don't forget to tell us in the comments section below. While you're there, make sure to subscribe to Crime Zone for more true crime content like this. making sure to hit the notification bell to stay up to date with our latest videos. Thank you for watching.